Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the podcast. On this episode, I'm going to be talking to my mom, Jennifer Fields, to get her opinions on homeschooling and the American education system, given her different experiences and thoughts. So, hello.
Hello.
I guess we can start by you kind of giving your background on school and the experiences that you've had in your life with school.
Well, I went to high school at just a average sized high school, and after that I was the first in my family to continue on for higher education, so I went to community college and got my associate's degree in nursing. And from there I haven't furthered my education. That's about where it ends.
Okay, and then I guess, so it's a little bit different than when I talked to Maddie because you have us as children, so you've kind of had a different experience with education in terms of deciding what to do for our education, so you can kind of touch base maybe with what education you've put us into for our lives and the reasoning behind that.
So right from the beginning I decided to move to a neighborhood that was known for schools, which I figured would give my kids the best opportunity to succeed, since it seemed like surrounding communities had a totally different outlook on college and how they prepared their children, their students, I should say. So we moved to the Lincoln Way area because they were known for their high schools, and they had good programs throughout elementary school with enrichment programs, and I figured it would give them the best advantage.
And do you think that choosing to do that has paid off, or what has your experience been with that school system since we've been here?
I think it's definitely paid off, but I think that I've learned a lot from when you, my older son, graduating from high school, and the decisions I made with Madison, just seeing your struggles and your struggles with college and what classes in you took during high school and what paid off and what didn't. And I just the level of intensity in the schools is can sometimes backfire on the kids, and I think that it plays a toll on mental health, which is kind of overlooked. Everything is kind of competitive to a point where it is just too much. I have Jackson, who's 9 years old, and he's doing a project already this weekend. He has to determine what he wants to do when he grows up, how much he wants to make, what kind of car, what kind of house, what kind of animals, and there's just no emphasis on who you want to be as a person, whether it just be a good person, a kind person. The emphasis is too much is on what are you going to do, how much are you going to make. And I just feel that the schools are losing touch with what's important in society to make people better people all around.
So I talked to Maddie on episode 2 about her experience with being taken out of high school and doing the joint program through junior college as a variation of homeschooling. And obviously that stemmed from your thoughts at first in deciding to go through with that or even formulate the idea in the first place. So would you say that you are happy with the results that have happened for her, and maybe just speak a little bit on that experience in general?
Well, I think the decision came mostly because I remember talking to you when you were younger and you started to get burnt out around sophomore year, and I tried to encourage you to graduate early. I said, let's graduate early, get out a year earlier, which is not the norm. So it kind of, I think kids think of that as, no, that would put me in a different category. I'd be more of a failure, or it just doesn't seem possible in a positive way, which to me, I never looked at it. I did actually graduate 6 months early from high school. I don't know if I ever even told you that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I just think that you didn't feel that was really truly an option, and I did, but because you guys are just ingrained with the fact that you have to take AP classes, you have to do this, you have to do extracurriculars, you have to do community service, or you're not going to get into the college of your dreams, and it's so ingrained that if you don't follow textbook what your teachers have been telling you since a young age, that you're just a failure, or you're not trying hard enough, or you're not going to make it, you're not going to have the same opportunities. And I see, just from what you went through, you struggled. You kind of got in a depression to the point where you didn't want to go to school. The last senior year was just not good. And then all the AP classes and everything that you did kind of didn't really pay off because you had to retake all those courses again in college. And it's almost like it made college that much harder for you because you were bored to the point where I'm doing this all over again. So with Maddie, I decided to look into the option because she was starting to enter her junior year, which is basically where you start like the college level courses, because she was in her AP classes, just, had all the honors classes. And I said to myself, why not just start college now? So I knew a couple of people that had taken their kids out of school just for mental health reasons, and I knew Maddie was struggling emotionally too. So I figured it's such a toxic environment with kids these days, and I figured why not give Maddie the opportunity to do something even maybe better. Instead of looking down on it, actually would get her ahead in the game, and she would graduate high school a year early with college credits that would save her time in the long run.
Okay, and so also just because I know I talked about in the first episode that I will be attending Florida Southern College in the fall of this year, and then in the previous episode Maddie also said the same. So I want to kind of talk myself a little bit on what has happened for Maddie in terms of the outcome of being withdrawn from high school and taking courses at the junior college, where even though some people fear that you won't be looked at the same if that is the route that you take and you are homeschooled, it seems as if things are working out fine for her in terms of college prospect, where she's getting similar scholarship money to me after graduating high school and going to a junior college with my diploma and almost an associate's, and she's going in a year earlier than she should have if she would have stayed into high school. So just to make note of that there is proven success with our personal story that we have had with Maddie specifically, to where withdrawing has helped her not only emotionally, as she talked about in the previous episode, but also in terms of her college prospect. It's done well for her as well. So I guess I wanted to move forward with talking about Jackson, who's 9, and kind of what you think moving forward now that you've seen the outcome of me going through things through the public education system, as most children do, and doing what you have with Maddie, what you think you'll do with him and why.
I feel that it should be individually based. I mean, there's so many aspects that could go into it, whether or not your student is, ahead academically, because I don't think that I would have chosen this route had Maddie not. I mean, we did have to get her tested at the junior college and make sure she was college ready for the class. You have to test into the courses. So I guess it would depend on if Jackson was thriving in high school, if he had a good group of friends that, he enjoyed seeing on a daily basis, or if he was involved with extracurriculars that kept him motivated in a positive way. If his overall mental health was in a good place and he was enjoying where he was at, I would probably just allow him to ride that out, or maybe even kind of incorporate both, because there's so much that I've learned through this that I'm still learning on a daily basis, that there's just so many different avenues that you can take. Like, I could have used the school for, say, send Maddie for Spanish, and she could have taken a couple courses at the high school and then taken the rest of the courses at the junior college. So maybe even the prospect of taking English and math at the college and then keeping him in the high school for a half day. I guess it would just be individually based on where he's at.
Okay. In all 3 episodes now, we've kind of briefly mentioned mental health without going too much into it. And in doing my research for the paper before starting the multimodal portion of the project, I found a lot of information on the negative aspects of the public high school setting for mental health, whether it be anxiety, depression, or even worse, the rising amount of suicide attempts in high school age students. And one concern that people look at on the flip side is for children who are homeschooled or any variation of homeschooling, including being withdrawn and thrown into a junior college early, is whether or not that damages them socially in the development that they would get if they were in a public education environment. So after seeing the outcome of what Maddie's gone through and what I've gone through, and even with Jackson still being in the public education system, how do you think that the social development of children is affected by the idea of homeschooling versus public education?
I truly think that homeschooling is more beneficial. I think that as long as you have the right resources and you do your homework and you get them involved and there's plenty of ways to get your child involved, and I think that if anything, they can grow faster and are more positive and have a lot more self-esteem if they're not continually ridiculed at school, or even just the degree of negativity that they get even from teachers that are either burnt out or just don't, it's just a different setting at high school than it is, say, college, where your professors are there because they want you to succeed, and they're not trying to meet quotas of tests and in other aspects of that don't always treat the individual the way they should. But I feel that even with Maddie pulling her out, she had the opportunity to get a job, and I feel like she's learned a lot of skills just from being able to work, more skills than even, say, being in a sport, which I thought was important at the time.
So do you think that, because me and Maddie talked about this, how in actuality the social environment of a high school is almost entirely opposite of what you'll experience in the real world, and that, as you mentioned, getting out and getting a job or even the college environment is much more in line with the real world once you get out of school? Do you feel that that's where the actual development socially is important for children, is once they're out of a high school setting, whether it's after school or, like you mentioned, in a work setting, or waiting until they get into college?
Yeah, because I think the schools haven't kept up with what works best for kids. As far as, the environment of a school is pretty much regimented to the effect of everybody. It's just, I don't want to compare it to a prison, but you're kind of put in a building and you kind of are herded around from class to class, and there's not a whole lot of, I don't even know how to, I wouldn't go that far, but I just feel like you're not allowed to make a lot of your own decisions. You're not allowed to think out of the box as much as you can, I think, outside of that environment.
Okay, and to kind of finish up, I know that in making the decision to homeschool Maddie or pull her out of high school, that you have gotten a lot of questions and ridicule in some ways and praise in others, but as a message to anybody who is considering the option of homeschooling for their children or for themselves, or just to kind of clear the air for people who don't understand the topic at all, what is your overall outlook on homeschooling and whether or not people should look more into it for themselves?
Well, I think that everybody you have to know that your child, and obviously with Maddie, I call it homeschooling, but I knew I had to have her in a setting that was surrounded by people and kept the normalcy of what society expects out of people. I couldn't keep her in the house with me teaching her, that type of setting, because that wouldn't have worked for her. She would have felt too much out of the norm where she felt like something was wrong with her. And I just wanted to keep her around people, but maybe people with more positive attitude. People that go to school, that college most likely want to be there. They're not, being forced to go to college. That's a decision that they're making on their own. So I think that you just have to know your kid. You have to know your child. You have to know where they're at in their, mentally and academically. And you have to be willing to be their support system and be willing to go that extra mile to make sure that they're in the right place. Because I mean, if I was to pull Maddie in, I always gave her the option that, hey, if this is not where you should be, if you're feeling this is not working, there's other options. We can go back to school, we can go back to high school, we'll figure it out. Whatever's going to work best to keep you happy and make you successful.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences, and thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.